12 tomato plants on the left, 12 tomato plants on the right. Same raised beds in my Midwest backyard, same seed packet, same watering can. By the middle of July last summer, the bed on the left had fungus gnats lifting off the soil every time I brushed a leaf, and 2 plants collapsing with rot right at the stem. The bed on the right, 18 inches away, was clean. Not one gnat, not one spot of rot, not one plant lost. The only difference between those 2 beds was a brown bottle from the drugstore that cost me about $3, mixed into a watering can once a week. Plain 3% hydrogen peroxide, the same bottle sitting in your bathroom cabinet right now. Now, you've probably seen the claims that one splash of this stuff wipes out every garden pest forever. I have run it through my test beds for 3 full seasons, and today I'm going to show you what it really does, what it does not do, and exactly how to mix it so it helps instead of hurts. And stay with me to the end, because the whole trick lives in one thing that happens in the first 60 seconds after that peroxide hits your soil. You can see it, and if you get down close, you can hear it. Mix the bottle wrong, and that exact same reaction turns around and burns your roots instead. Nobody ever explains that part. I will. I'm Steve Calloway. I've been growing food in the same backyard for more than 20 years, and for most of those years I've run side-by-side test beds and written down what actually happened. My first garden was a jungle of green that gave me about a dozen tomatoes all summer. My wife Karen keeps the harvest log now, and these days our problem is giving food away fast enough. Every gardener I know fights the same quiet war under the soil. Fungus gnats in the seed trays. Damping off, which is the disease that tips over a perfectly healthy seedling at the soil line overnight. Root rot in containers that stay a little too wet. You never see the enemy doing the damage. You just see the bodies in the morning, and the answer at the garden centre is a shelf of sprays and granules that run $15 to $30 a bottle, most of them made for a different problem than the one you actually have. So when the claims started going around that a $3 bottle of hydrogen peroxide could do the same job, I did what I always do. I set up a test. 2 raised beds side by side, 2 seed trays on the basement shelf side by side, 2 containers of peppers on the back porch side by side. One of each pair got the peroxide treatment on a schedule. The other got plain water and nothing else. Karen wrote everything down in the log week by week for 3 seasons. Some of what the internet says about this bottle held up in my beds better than products costing 10 times as much, and some of it fell flat on its face. You're getting both halves today because you deserve the whole picture, not just the exciting half. And hold on to that question about the first 60 seconds, because once you understand what happens in the soil during that first minute, every do and every don't in this video will make perfect sense. Now, everything I'm showing you today is one piece of a bigger system, and I wrote that whole system down day by day in a book called Steve's 30-Day Maximum Yield Protocol. It's 115 pages, and it walks you through the exact 30 days I follow in my own backyard to roughly double what every plant produces, from soil preparation all the way through harvest, one day at a time. It covers the big 7 yield killers, which is the checklist I use to find whatever is quietly holding a garden back. It covers feeding for fruit instead of foliage, and the strategic pruning that feels completely wrong the first time you do it, but multiplies production. It covers companion planting and succession planting with the science behind why each one works. It works in raised beds, in-ground rows, and containers on a patio. The price is $17, marked down from $47, and I priced it that way on purpose, because a garden that follows the system pays that back with one good tomato plant. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you're watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. All right, back to that brown bottle, because the first thing you need to know is what's actually inside it. Hydrogen peroxide, the 3% kind from the drugstore shelf, is about the simplest thing you can buy. It is water carrying 1 extra piece of oxygen. That's it. It's sold as a first aid product for cleaning up scrapes. It costs somewhere between $1 and $4 depending on the store, and the bottle is always brown. Remember that. The brown bottle is not a style choice, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why it matters. That extra piece of oxygen is the whole story, and it is desperate to get loose. What happens when it does get loose is the part I'm saving for the end because it explains everything else. For now, just know this. You are not pouring a pesticide on your garden. You are pouring supercharged water. And in about 60 seconds, it turns back into plain water and disappears. That one fact is the reason it's safe when you use it right, and the reason the title of this video needed testing in the first place. So let me give you the results out of Karen's log, because the garden doesn't lie. It rewards the system, not the guesswork. Test number 1 was fungus gnats in the seed trays. If you start seeds indoors, you know, these little black flies, the adults are annoying, but the adults are not the problem. The problem is their babies, tiny larvae down in the soil, chewing on brand new roots. I hung yellow, sticky traps over both trays and counted. The plain water tray averaged over 40 gnats a week on the trap at the worst of it. The peroxide tray, drenched on schedule, dropped to a handful within 2 weeks, and then to almost none. Same shelf, same light, same seed mix. Test number 2 was damping off. That's the fungus that pinches a seedling right at the soil line so it folds over dead, and once it starts in a tray, it usually runs through the whole thing. In my untreated trays, I have lost as many as 5 seedlings out of 12 in a bad spring. In the treated trays, across 3 springs, I lost one seedling in 3 years. Test number 3 was a pepper container I deliberately overwatered until the leaves started yellowing and the soil went sour. The early stage of root rot. I drenched it with the peroxide mix twice, 7 days apart, backed off the water, and that plant recovered and gave me a normal harvest. Its overwatered twin without treatment never fully came back. Those are the 3 wins, and they are real ones. Notice something about all 3, though. Every one of those victories happened down in the soil. Keep that in your back pocket because it's about to matter a great deal. And it matters because of how a creature like the fungus gnat actually lives. The flying adult you see is nearly at the end of its life, almost the entire population. The eggs and the larvae is sitting in the top 2 inches of your soil at any given moment. That is 2 inches, not deep down, just the top layer. Spraying the air kills a few adults and does nothing to the nursery underneath. This is why the sprays so often disappoint people. You are shooting at the 10% you can see and ignoring the 90% you can't. A soil drench, which just means slowly pouring the mix onto the soil like a heavy watering, goes straight into the nursery. You fight the war where the enemy actually lives. I tested this myself. Spray against drench, and the drench won by a mile every single time. So here is the recipe, and I want you to get this exact, because the mix is the difference between medicine and damage. You need half a cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide. Half a cup, not a full cup. You need 1 gallon of plain water. Pour the water into your watering can first, then measure the half cup of peroxide and stir it in. Give it a gentle swirl. That's the whole recipe. Now for putting it on. Wait until evening, after the sun is low. I'll tell you exactly why evening matters at the end, and I promise the reason is worth the wait. Let the soil get slightly dry on top before you treat, so it drinks the mix in instead of shedding it. Pour slowly around the base of each plant, right on the soil. Soak the top, few inches. Skip the leaves entirely for this one. For a bad outbreak, do this once every 7 days. That's every 7 days, once a week, for 3 weeks. Then stop and watch. In my beds, 3 treatments has ended every gnat and damping off problem I've thrown it at. When you pour it on, get down close and listen. You will hear a faint fizzing down in the soil, like a glass of soda going flat. Don't let it worry you. That sound is the entire secret of this video, and we are getting closer to it. Now, leaves are a different story, and they need a gentler touch. Leaf tissue is softer than root tissue, so the soil mix is too strong up top. For foliage, cut it in half. 1/4 cup of 3% peroxide in 1 gallon of water. 1/4 cup, half the soil recipe. Put it in a pump sprayer or a spray bottle and mist the leaves, tops and undersides in the evening only. What this does on the leaf is knock back the early stages of fungal trouble, the powdery coatings and the leaf spots before they dig in. What it does not do is last. By morning it is gone, turned back into water. So during a wet, humid stretch, you may need to repeat it every few days. I use the leaf spray maybe 3 or 4 times a season on my tomatoes and squash, always at the first sign of trouble, never as a routine. And never, ever spray it onto open flowers. Blooms are the most delicate tissue on the plant, and your pollinators are working those flowers. Soil and leaves only. All right, I promised you the whole picture, so let's talk about the half of this. The excited videos leave out. Look at that title again. All garden pests forever. I ran this bottle against everything my backyard could throw at it for 3 seasons, and I can tell you plainly what it did not touch. Squash bugs, unbothered. Tomato hornworms, those big green caterpillars, completely unbothered. Japanese beetles laughed at it. Anything with a hard shell or a thick, waxy skin walks right through a peroxide treatment because the reaction we're building up to only overwhelms soft, small, thin-skinned things. And forever is not a real word in a garden. Nothing is forever out here. The peroxide is gone within the hour, so it leaves no shield behind, no residue, no lasting protection. New pests fly in next week not knowing or caring what you poured last week. If someone tells you one splash of anything ends all pests permanently, they have not kept a harvest log. What this bottle actually is the cheapest and safest tool I have ever tested for one specific battlefield, the soil against one specific class of enemy, the soft and the small. Fungus, gnat larvae, damping off, early root rot, sour, suffocating, overwatered soil. On that battlefield, $3 beats 30. Off that battlefield, save your peroxide and go pick the hornworms off by hand like I do, with a flashlight and a coffee can of soapy water. What about aphids, you might ask, since they're soft-bodied? I tested that too. 2 summers running on paired pepper plants. A direct hit with the leaf spray does knock some aphids down, but plain soapy water knocked down more in my counts, costs even less, and doesn't risk the foliage, so soapy water keeps that job. Slugs and snails. No meaningful effect at garden-safe strength. And the strength that would bother a slug would bother your plants a whole lot more. So write this down as the honest verdict from 3 years of logs. Below the soil line, against the soft and the small, this bottle is the best $3 in gardening. Above the soil line, against anything you can see, crawling, there's almost always a better tool. The videos promising forever are selling excitement. I'm giving you a test result, and the test result is plenty good enough without the exaggeration. Before we get to the big reveal, let me clear up the 4 mistakes I see people make with this bottle, because every one of them is avoidable. The first mistake is mixing it too strong. Folks figure if half a cup works, 2 cups must work better. It does not work better. Remember, mix it wrong, and the very reaction that kills the gnat larvae will scorch your roots. Half a cup per gallon in the soil, 1/4 cup per gallon on the leaves, and not a splash more. The second mistake is applying it at high noon in July sun. At the end of this video, you'll understand why that wastes most of your mix before it ever does its job. The third mistake is spraying open blooms, which we covered. Protect the flowers, protect the bees. And the fourth mistake is using it as your everyday watering. This is medicine, not food. Your soil is full of good living things too. Earthworms, helpful fungi, the whole underground workforce. And the mix at proper strength in the top couple inches spares most of them while hitting the troublemakers. But drenching every single day tips that balance the wrong way. Treat when there's a problem on the 7-day schedule, then put the bottle away. Let me gather all of that back up in one breath before we move on, because we've covered a lot of ground. Soil trouble gets half a cup per gallon, poured on in the evening, once every 7 days, 3 weeks, and done. Leaf trouble gets 1/4 cup per gallon, missed it in the evening, never on open blooms. Hard-shelled bugs get a different tool entirely. And the mix never goes stronger than the recipe, no matter how bad the outbreak looks. If you remember nothing else from today, remember those 4 lines, and you'll never hurt a plant with this bottle. Remember also that I still owe you the why behind all of it, the evening rule, the strength rule, and that fizzing sound. We're almost there, and I promise it's not what you think. While the bottle is out, though, there are 3 bonus jobs it does beautifully, all tested, all in the log. Job 1 is seed soaking. Before planting, soak your seeds for 30 minutes in 1 cup of warm water with 1 teaspoon of 3% peroxide stirred in. That's 1 teaspoon in 1 cup, a very gentle mix. It cleans disease off the seed coat and softens it. And in my side-by-side trays, soaked seeds came up a day or two faster and more evenly than dry planted ones. One note on the bottle itself while we're at it. An open bottle of peroxide slowly weakens, so replace an opened bottle after about 6 months and store it capped in a cool, dark cabinet. If you're not sure whether an old bottle still has life in it, pour a splash into the sink onto a bit of grime. If it fizzes hard, it's still good. If it just sits there like water, it has become water, and it's time for a fresh $3 bottle. Job 2 is clean up. At the end of the season, I wash my plastic pots and seed trays in a bucket of water with a good glug of peroxide, and I wipe my pruner blades with it straight from the bottle between plants when I'm cutting out anything diseased. Clean tools. Ah, how you stop a sick plant from infecting 10 healthy ones, and this does the job for pennies. Job 3 is the houseplant rescue. If somebody in your house loves a plant a little too much with the watering can and the soil has gone swampy and sour, one soil drench at the garden strength, half a cup per gallon, will often turn it around. It did for the peppers on my porch, and it has saved 2 of Karen's houseplants since. Same bottle, same mix, same result. And there's a 4th job worth knowing, which is watering in your transplants. The week you move seedlings from their trays out into the garden is the most dangerous week of their lives. The roots get bruised in the move, and bruised roots are an open door for every rot organism in the soil. So on transplant day, I water each new seedling in with the gentle mix. 1/4 cup of 3% peroxide per gallon. 1/4 cup, the leaf strength, not the full soil strength, because young roots are tender. In my paired transplant tests, the watered-in seedlings lost fewer plants in that first week and sat up straighter faster. It's a 30-second insurance policy that costs about a nickel a plant. Now, let me put this whole thing on a calendar for you, because knowing the recipe is one thing and knowing when to reach for it is another. In late winter and early spring, when the seed trays are on the shelf, that's peroxide season number 1. Soak the seeds before planting and drench the trays on the 7-day schedule at the first sign of gnats or the first tip seedling. In late spring, on transplant day, water everything in with the 1/4 cup mix. One time and you're done. Through the heart of summer, the bottle mostly stays in the cabinet. The only summer calls are a container that got overwatered during a rainy stretch, or the leaf spray at the very first white dusting of fungus on the squash. In the evening, gentle mix. And then in fall, peroxide season number 2, the cleanup. Every pot, every tray, every tool that touched a diseased plant gets washed before it goes into storage, so next year's problems don't spend the winter in your garage waiting for you. That's the whole year. 4 moments, one $3 bottle. Notice what's not on that calendar. There is no weekly all-season drenching, no pouring it on healthy beds, just in case. The bottle earns its keep by showing up for specific jobs at specific times, the same way everything in a good garden system does. Same space, same effort, completely different result. Which brings us finally to the 60 seconds I've been promising you since the very start. Here is what actually happens when that mix hits your soil. Hydrogen peroxide, remember, is water carrying one extra piece of oxygen, and that extra piece is barely hanging on. The moment the mix touches living cells in your soil, they force that oxygen loose, and it doesn't leave politely. It tears loose all at once in a violent little burst, millions and millions of times over. That is the fizz. That sound like flat soda is the sound of millions of oxygen bursts going off in the dirt. And every one of those bursts shreds whatever soft, tiny thing it happens inside of or against. A fungal spore has almost no armor, so the burst rips it apart. A gnat egg, gone. A soft larva chewing on a root, it can't withstand it. That is the killing mechanism, raw oxygen released fast at close range. So why don't your plant's roots die too? 2 reasons. First, root cells wear a tougher skin than a spore or a larva ever will. Second, plants actually manufacture their own natural protection against peroxide because tiny amounts of it occur in nature all the time. So a root can calmly disarm what would tear a spore to pieces. But that protection has a limit, and the limit is the dose. At half a cup per gallon, The burst overwhelms the soft and the small, and the roots shrug it off. Double or triple the mix, and you overwhelm the roots too. And now you've burned the very plant you were saving. That is why the recipe is the recipe. And here's the part that ties a bow on everything, including that brown bottle. Sunlight breaks hydrogen peroxide apart. Leave peroxide in a clear glass on a sunny windowsill, and by evening you're holding plain water. That is the only reason the bottle is brown, to keep light out. And it's why the bottle belongs capped in a cool, dark cabinet, and why an open bottle should be replaced after about 6 months. It's also the answer to evening watering. Pour your mix in the noon sun, and the light starts destroying it before it can soak down to the enemy. Pour it in the evening, and every drop arrives at full strength. So the fizz is the weapon, the dose is the safety, and the darkness is the delivery. Same $3 bottle, completely different result once you know why it works. And that's exactly the kind of thing the whole protocol is built on. Tested cheap and written out day by day so you can just follow along. Steve's 30-day maximum yield protocol is the complete 30-day system I follow in this backyard to roughly double what every plant produces from soil preparation all the way through harvest. And it works whether you grow in raised beds, in-ground rows, or containers on a patio. It's $17 down from $47, and one saved tomato plant pays for the whole book. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you're watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So there it is, half a cup of 3% peroxide in 1 gallon of water poured on the soil in the evening once every 7 days, and let the fizz fight the war you can't see. If you run this test in your own beds, come back and tell me the before and after. I read every single one. Next time, I'm going to show you the 10-minute jar test that tells you exactly what your soil is made of, using nothing but a mason jar and tap water, and why that one test decides how often you should really be watering. Get out there and get your hands dirty, and I'll see you in the garden.